All right, what's happening, y'all? It's your boy Rico from Street Scores, and it's time to break down everything that was said and that happened today in the day 20 of the Commanders 2023 training camp. Of course, we don't have access to like a lot of the practice footage, especially when they get the team drills and things like that. But we got a lot of really useful information today. Like, I didn't expect to hear so many notable quotes, to see random clips of Logan Thomas even practicing and things like that. So, of course, we have a big time injury update on everybody who practiced today, who returned, who is still not practicing, all of that type of stuff. But also, Ron Rivera said that they plan to rotate left guards mid-season, like during the regular season, just throwing Sadiq Charles and Chris Paul in there. I hate that idea. We got to talk about that. Also, Chase Young was back. It wasn't like a super duper contact type of practice, but Chase Young was back in team drills and everything like nothing was wrong. And then Ron Rivera also spoke on that and the fact that he's going to meet with a doctor soon. And then Terry McLaurin, Ron Rivera talked about him. Eric Bieniemy talked about Sam Howell and the fact that the Kansas City Chiefs wanted to draft Terry McLaurin back in 2019. A whole bunch of stuff, man. So it's a lot to talk about. Again, way more than I expected. But when I woke up this morning, I didn't expect us to have this much interesting news coming from day 20 of Washington Commanders training camp, so I'm super excited. Now, it's definitely nowhere near enough news for us to go position group by position group like I normally have been, but it's enough for us to actually talk about some real stuff. So before we dive into all of that, make sure you stiff arm that like button, stiff arm the subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button so you get notification each and every time I release these informative and opinionated videos. And make sure you hit that bell so you can get the notifications immediately rather than like 3 days later. And then, of course, make sure you stay tuned for all of the content I'm coming out with, man, especially once we get to the regular season. It's all in, man. Live streams constantly, at least like 2-3 a week, videos every day, all kinds of content, maybe 2-3 videos a day. We're gonna be in the full swing of things, and I'm just excited to have football back. So make sure y'all stay tuned for all the content. I'm still working on all of the rookie film sessions, so just be patient there. I'm hoping I can get a lot of those done by week 1. We've already done the first 3 picks, and Emmanuel Forbes, Quan Martin, and Ricky Stromberg. Braden Daniels is next, and I can't wait. I may have to skip a few of them to get to Andre Jones with as good as he looks right now. But without further ado, let's get it.
You tell your family you're gonna be a commander.
All right, we have a bunch of injury updates. That's going to be quite a bit of the video, maybe like easily at least a third, maybe half of the video injury updates. We're going to start with Terry McLaurin. First of all, Ron Rivera, when addressing the media before practice, confirmed that Terry McLaurin's x-rays are negative, MRIs and everything, no serious damage, and he said that the team will keep him off of his feet for the next few days, and then they'll check on him after that. Again, from everything we've seen, everything we've heard, reports, people that were there for the MRI, got the MRI results and looked at him and everything, it's expected for him to be ready by week 1, but I feel like worst case scenario, especially with us going against the Cardinals week 1, he should at the very least be ready for week 2, so I'm very optimistic about Terry McLaurin. And for those of y'all who may have forgotten, McLaurin sprained his toe, technically like a low-grade turf toe, against Baltimore, and again the x-rays came back negative and he was considered day to day. So that right now is where we're at. Like, if this were mid-season, he would probably be considered day to day, not out for like 2, 3, 4 weeks or whatever. So that's really positive news. And then as far as other injury updates, because it's a lot, man. First of all, Ron Rivera said that Chase Young, with his stinger that he suffered against, it is 4th snap against the Browns, has a doctor appointment coming up, but things are positive. That's what Ron Rivera said about Chase Young. And then even more positive news, Chase Young was out there participating in team drills. Now, it was not a padded practice. There wasn't a lot of contact and things like that, but he was out there in team drills, and that's big news because we have a lot of guys that some people feel like are healthier than Chase Young that weren't even taking part in team drills today. So that's definitely positive news. It was definitely more of like a show team day, starters working versus certain looks and things like that, and basically like a glorified walkthrough, but still the fact that he was out there in team drill says a lot. Now moving on to Logan Thomas. With his calf injury, Ron Rivera said that they're increasing his workload, and you can tell because he was out there doing a lot of sideline work today, which is new, and that's a big positive sign for his progress. Again, they've been saying for the past week or two that it's really, if anything, stamina and conditioning getting him back on the field. It's not even necessarily his calf injury, but the fact that he's doing stuff on the sideline, it means that he's ramping up. And of course, none of these starters that we're talking about today are gonna play against the Browns, or at the very least, I think no starters should play. But I know for a fact a lot of the big names, I don't think Jahan Dotson, I don't think Sam Howell, I don't think the entire starting O-line. Pretty sure none of the starting defense, maybe Cody Barton, maybe Khaleke Hudson or Jamin, I don't know, but I don't think Emmanuel Forbes will go out there. I'm pretty sure it's just going to be straight backup. So all of these guys are pretty much at least getting another 2 weeks off anyway. We have 18 days, like you can see in the thumbnail, until we play the Cardinals week 1. That's plenty of time for these guys that everybody's saying they're being overly cautious with, and if we had a game tomorrow, maybe all of them would even play. But I know for a fact most of them would. These injuries are not that serious. They're just missing practice because they don't want to make a small thing a bigger thing. So at the very least, worst case scenario, these guys have 18 days to get back together. So I think we're fine to go. Also, Jamin Davis didn't practice today. He was sent home sick, but Ron Rivera said that he's pleased with his progress on the field. Ron Rivera said that, quote, Jamin is playing fast. He's more confident. I thought with some of the coverage stuff, he really put himself in position, unquote. And that's great news on one end. But at the same time, that doesn't sound like a player that's in his third year that you're talking about. Those are the type of compliments you give to a rookie. This guy has, technically 1 real year left in his contract after this season, and then maybe we pick up the 5th-year option, but I'm not entirely sure of that unless he balls out this year or maybe next year. But I mean, that just does not sound like he's talking about a 3rd-year veteran right there at all. That literally sounds like he's talking about Emmanuel Forbes or Quan Martin or somebody like that. So, hey, man, it's time to step it up, Jamin Davis. They got to stop babying you and acting like, oh, man, look at the progress, look at the development. No, it's time to perform. I'm tired of the ceiling talk. I want to see some floor. I want to see some production out there. And I think he has been pretty good this offseason, so I do think he'll be pretty good for us this upcoming season. But still, I'm tired of hearing comments like that. What do we do with that? He's a 3-year veteran. Why are we still talking to him as if he's a baby in the league? Also, Danny Johnson is back at practice. That's huge news right there, man. Congratulations to Danny Johnson. I swear, man, the way it seems like, I guess Mark Andrews' body slam on Danny Johnson sent his soul to some unreachable realm, and then we had to beat the Ravens to get his soul back. They need to make a movie out of that or something, because it's just crazy that as soon as we beat the Ravens, suddenly Danny Johnson is back practicing. But I don't know, maybe I'm looking too far into it. Also, Charles Leno was working on the side field today, so Cornelius Lucas was starting at left tackle again. Also, nobody has seen Kendall Fuller at practice today, so it seems like maybe a Veterans Day off, because I don't think he's hurt. Last time we saw him, that second joint practice day with the Ravens, he looked good out there. He took the first day off, played the second day and looked good. And then, I mean, I don't know. Well, technically he didn't take the first day off, but I think he got a little banged up, or he played some of it. Because I do remember the first day he did get toasted by Odell Beckham Jr. at one point. But then he recovered that second day and had a pretty good day. And I don't think we've seen it in practice since. And I don't think he's hurt. I haven't heard anything about it. Probably just a veteran they're letting rest. Just like Jonathan Allen. Now he's dealing with that foot issue, but he wasn't at practice. So we'll see how that goes. Samuel Cosme, he was just working on the sideline. He wasn't doing team drills today. That's really interesting. And then Dax Milne just wasn't at practice today at all. And as far as Samuel Cosme goes, Ricky Strongberg stepped up to start at right guard in his place, which is really interesting. Or at the very least at times. Maybe he wasn't starting at right guard the entire practice, but at least at certain points he was. Now next up, let's talk about a lot of roster updates, changes, information that came from the practice. First of all, Rivera said that the last 3 years, there have been a question mark at quarterback, but after seeing Sam Howell and what he's done in training camp, Rivera feels more comfortable about the position than he ever has since he's been the Commanders head coach. He said, quote, there's not a question mark still, unquote, right now. He feels like the quarterback situation is settled. It's something they don't have to worry about. Now their focus is on other parts of the team, most notably starting left guard, which takes me to the next point. Rivera said that he's liked what he's seen from both Sadiq Charles and Chris Paul at left guard. Both have done a good job, and they're going to make a decision soon. But then at the same time, This guy came out and said, when asked about the left guard battle, Rivera said nice things about Chris Paul and Sadiq Charles, like we just said, and then he added capable work of Ricky Strongberg, which is what we'll get to there as far as Ricky Strongberg being more of a guard than a center. But then Ron Rivera hinted at a potential Sadiq Charles, Chris Paul rotation in games. And they did that last season at right tackle with Samuel Cosme and Cornelius Lucas. But can we please stop that? Samuel Cosme even said this offseason, and we assumed as fans, like we all knew, but then he even came out and said either in the end of last season or the beginning of this offseason that basically that was really difficult to deal with, going between right tackle, right guard, not getting consistent snaps at right tackle, sometimes even not in the game at all. Right tackle, then sit, right guard, then sit or whatever, and it could be game to game, it could be quarter to quarter, and I just don't see what we gain from that. You had this entire offseason to pick who's the better of the left guards. And then anyway, I mean, as long as Sadiq Charles is healthy, I like his talent. And y'all know I've been rooting for Chris Paul as the starting left guard. Where regardless of whoever starts, we have a good starter, in my opinion, and a good backup. So I feel like it shouldn't even be that difficult of a decision where this should leak into the regular season. Just pick one and move on. We'll be fine either way. So I'm just potentially rotating the starting left guards in regular season games where the games matter and like wins and losses actually count. That's insane to me. That's one of the dumbest sounding things I've heard Ron Rivera say in a while. I really hope he does not mean that at all, man. So let's go ahead and get to a lot of the practice notes. First of all, special teams wise, there were a few guys working on punt returns, and Dax Milne was not one of them. And he looked healthy in that preseason game against the Ravens where he had one special teams play. He had 17 snaps in the game and then was on back there on one punt, but I think he either fair caught it or it went behind him for a touchback. Either way, he didn't get a chance to return it. And then he looked healthy at the very least. I wouldn't necessarily say he looked good, but he looked healthy. And then suddenly today in camp, when it's a glorified walkthrough and even Chase Young is doing team drills, Dax Milne isn't out there catching punts. Is it safe to say that Kazmir Allen has officially become a lock for this roster just simply because he's a punt returner? But even outside of just being a good punt returner, hopefully if he can get some more consistent hands, maybe he can contribute as a receiver as well. Dax Milne is easily the better receiver today than Kazmir Allen, but Kazmir Allen already looks like the better punter, and it looks like he's only getting better, where we already know where Dax Milne is with that. He's safe, but Kazmir Allen provides some explosion. I mean, we're out here with 20-plus yard returns and punt returns. Since when have we had that? Since DeAndre Carter, that's it? So, hey, man, I'm really excited about Kazmir Allen. Is it safe to say that he's a lock to make this roster now? And then that last receiver spot is up for grabs between Marcus Kemp, Byron Pringle, Bryson Tremaine, Mitchell Tinsley, and all of those guys. As of right now, if I had to put my money on it, it would be between Marcus Kemp and Byron Pringle. I think it may be Marcus Kemp, but I wouldn't be surprised if Byron Pringle, with him being able to play every receiver position, and especially if you're looking at the top four guys, Terry McLaurin banged up, De'Ami Brown is cleared to go after a concussion, but still, that happened. Curtis Samuel, we had the injury worries a couple of years ago. Jahan Dotson missed like 4 games last year. So, you know, after those 4 guys, who do we have? Kazmir Allen, who's a pure punt returner right now, not a guy we expect to contribute as an actual receiver. And so then do we trust Marcus Kemp enough as a receiver to go out there? That's really interesting. That may be why they end up going with Byron Pringle over Marcus Kemp. But at the same time, Marcus Kemp is the only guy, only him and Bryson Tremaine bring any sort of height to the receiver position. Also, Bryson Tremaine is a really good kickoff blocker. And man, kick return blocker. Those just don't come around often. There's not plenty of Marcus Kemps out there, so maybe that's the reason they keep him. But either way, I feel like that last spot's going to end up going to one of those ex-Chiefs guys. We'll see, though. Also, and I'm working on a whole 53-man roster final projection or whatever. That's going to come out in a few days, so make sure you stay tuned for that, because August 29th is the deadline. 4 p.m. is the deadline for the NFL teams to submit their rosters, and we'll probably get news about who's getting cut left and right, who's being kept and stuff like that, even before 4 p.m. hits. So I got to have that done at the very least by the 28th, so that y'all can have that video at least a day before that ends up coming out. But also, moving on, as planned, Jacoby Brissett took some reps with the ones today. It's because they want him to get reps with them, and probably because he'll play a lot Saturday. It means nothing other than that. It's nothing about Sam. I mean, there's no way some people are still thinking that there's any sort of quarterback competition between Sam Howell and Jacoby Brissett. At this point, it's more of a competition between Jacoby Brissett versus Jake Fromm than Sam Howell versus Jacoby Brissett. And I mean, Brissett, I got my eyes on you, man. This upcoming preseason game against the Bengals Saturday night, Hey man, don't let Jake Fromm outplay you again, because he definitely did against the Ravens. Thank you, Jake Fromm, a Georgia Bulldog, who I don't necessarily claim, but he had a really good game against the Ravens, so I got to give him his credit, man. Also, moving on, Chase Young and 11 on 11s, that was really notable, like we already talked about. But most importantly, Samuel Cosmi, with him missing teamwork, Ricky Strongberg was out there at right guard. Samuel Cosmi was on the sideline, dressed and everything, but just didn't participate in team drills. And it's really interesting because this Ricky Strongberg situation is perplexing. We drafted him. I thought he was a pure center. I feel like most people probably thought he was just a pure center. I'm pretty sure the Commanders, a lot of them, if not all of them, thought he was a pure center. So they're probably just getting him ready as a backup guard and center in case there's a serious run of injuries on several people. Because right now, if you're looking at the center position, you have at the very least Nick Gates in front of him. Tyler Larson's probably even in front of him right now, so he may be the third string center. And then when you're looking at left guard or right guard, he's the third stringer behind Sadiq Charles and Chris Paul on left guard, and then Samuel Cosmi and technically Chris Paul at right guard. Because if there's an injury to either of those two starters between Sadiq Charles and Samuel Cosmi, Chris Paul will be the first to step up. But Ricky Strongberg may be right behind those guys, which is really interesting because, again, I saw him as a pure center, so it's really interesting to see that he can contribute as a guard potentially. And I actually think Ricky Strongberg has been pretty good so far. I know it sucks that you draft a third-round pick and he doesn't start immediately, but it's more so just because we have a pretty good people in front of him that we don't need him to start yet. More so than Ricky Strongberg just isn't ready. I think if Ricky Strongberg had to go out there and start week 1 against the Arizona Cardinals at either position, I think we would be fine. I don't think we'll be great, but I think we'd be just fine. So it's really interesting that we just have so much depth in the interior offensive line, and Ricky Strongberg is third string no matter which way you really look at it, anywhere there. But that's good because, again, he's had a really good offseason. He looked pretty good against the Ravens in that preseason game. So I'm really interested in seeing how that works. I can't wait for him to earn the starting job. I don't want him to start due to injuries. I want him to be so good that they can't keep him off the field and he becomes a starter that way, which will, his clearest path is probably center, because Samuel Cosmi, to me, is going to be our best offensive lineman, the only true all-pro potential guy we have on this roster. I think he literally has Brandon Sheriff talent at the right guard position. And then left guard-wise, Chris Paul and Sadiq Charles are already competing, and I just doubt that Ricky Strongberg anytime soon looks better than either of those guys at left guard. So his clearest path is Nick Gates, but don't sleep on Nick Gates because he's looked really good so far this offseason, and he looks like a pretty good starting center at the very least. You could argue even really good at times, and he's like the spirit of the team on the offensive line. He's the one starting all of the fights. He's the one with all of the nasty and all of the grit. So, man, Ricky Strongberg, I just hope that when he starts, it's because he just got that much better rather than somebody getting hurt. That's my main point there. Also, Cole Holcomb had a great day today. Some really good catches, and everybody's also noticing how much he's improved as a much better blocker, which means that he's starting to turn into a dual threat tight end, which also means that he'll play a lot more, because we don't want to have to take Cole Turner off the field just simply because we ask the tight ends to block. I mean, John Bates is a pure blocker. I mean, maybe he can contribute in the passing game a little bit, and Logan Thomas, when healthy, but that's just the question right now, is he fully healthy? When healthy, he's a fairly decent dual threat tight end, a decent blocker, and a pretty good pass catcher. Cole Turner has the potential to be a really good pass catcher, our best receiving tight end, especially with Armani Rogers on IR right now. Ignoring him, Cole Turner easily has our best potential to be our best pass catching threat in our tight end room. And so the fact that he's improving as a blocker is going to be huge, because that's going to allow him to be on the field more, which also, again, these dual threat players, regardless of position, specifically tight end, man, him on the field, if he can be a really good blocker and a really good threat in the passing game, that doesn't signal to the defense what we plan on doing. Because right now, today, Cole Turner out in the field, the defense is going to assume that we're passing the ball. It's not quite likely that we run the ball, and if we do, maybe not very likely that we run at the Cole Turner side. But then again, he's improving as a blocker. But either way, once he becomes a really good blocker, at the very least a consistent blocker, him being on the field, it will not signal to the defense what we're trying to do. We can run the ball, we can pass the ball, whatever. The defense won't be able to immediately gather a lot of their players and assets and focus on one thing just simply because of the personnel we have on the field. That's why dual threat tight ends are so big. That's why Jay Gruden kept talking about it over and over again a few years ago for years in a row, because it really changes the offense, dog. It really does. So Cole Turner, man, the quicker you learn how to block and become a consistent blocker, the quicker this offense becomes one of the best in the NFL. I mean, it's that big of a difference. Also, Eric Bieniemy talked about Sam Howell's progression, and he said it's basically where you hoped it'd be. He mentioned mentioned again how he loves the Sam Howell autocorrects. He said, quote, he's right where he needs to be, unquote. And man, that autocorrecting thing is huge, man. That's one of the best. That's like a top 5 trait a quarterback can have. And the fact that Sam Howell has that, along with a lot of top traits that I'm really happy about, man, that's really interesting. Also, the Commanders have officially released punter Michael Pallardy, and we pretty much expected that. And after that punt he had in that Ravens game, somebody's picking him up. I said it live while we were live streaming, all watching the game together in my live stream for the Commanders versus Ravens preseason game Monday night. I literally said it live. After that punt, that man is going to get a job somewhere else. It's not going to be here because Tress Way is our punter, point blank, period. But that man definitely just earned a roster spot somewhere. So we went ahead and released him as expected. And I'd be really surprised if we get the week 1 he's not on some NFL roster, because that kick right there had to have been better than what most punters are doing in the NFL. That was a really impressive punt. If we didn't have Tress Way, I would actually be pretty at ease having that guy. And then lastly, also, Eric Bieniemy said that Kansas City liked McLaurin before the 2019 draft. Also said of McLaurin, quote, when you have role models like that in your locker room, you have a chance. They have a chance to learn from the ultimate professional as to what it's like to be a professional at this level, unquote. So first of all, the quote wise, the fact that Terry McLaurin is a role model, he makes it easier on the coaching staff by helping a lot of the players, especially the younger guys, learn how to become professional football players at the NFL level. Makes the coaches' jobs way easier. So that's why they appreciate Terry McLaurin. But most importantly, the thing I want to talk about the most is the fact that Eric Bieniemy and the Kansas City Chiefs really liked Terry McLaurin before that 2019 draft. And it's really interesting because shouts out to Jay Gruden and Kyle Smith and all of those guys for drafting Terry McLaurin in the 3rd round. But a lot of that was because they saw him as a potential great special teams player. They did not see, I mean, I didn't see it either. I'm not going to sit here and act like I did, but those guys did not see Terry McLaurin turning into this dominant top 10, top 8 receiver in the NFL. They just did not see that. And maybe Eric Bieniemy and the Kansas City Chiefs saw a little bit more potential in him as a receiver than the Commanders did. Well, back then, I think the Redskins, Washington football team, one of them. Either way, it doesn't matter. The burgundy and gold. So that's really cool that I'm pretty sure Eric Bieniemy, when looking at potentially taking this job, Terry McLaurin being on this team was probably one of them. Like, man, I wish I had him in Kansas City. I get a chance to coach him now that I'm going to the Commanders. That's really interesting. May have affected his decision coming here. I mean, Terry McLaurin was definitely not the only reason Eric Bieniemy came here, but he was probably one of the main reasons, especially from that quote right there, man. Eric Bieniemy loves himself some Terry McLaurin. You already see all of the pictures of them dapping each other up, hugging each other every chance they get, and then Eric Bieniemy hard coaching Terry McLaurin and yelling at him like Terry McLaurin's never been yelled at before by a coach, especially at the NFL level. So expecting greatness, expecting perfection out of him. Terry McLaurin loves Eric Bieniemy just as much as Eric Bieniemy loves Terry McLaurin. Match made in heaven. But yeah, man, that's the end of this video. Please stiff arm that like button, stiff arm that subscription button, and stiff arm the bell next to that subscription button. And please get in the comment section, let me know about everything discussed in this video. Danny Johnson coming back, Chase Young back participating in team drills, Kansas City and Eric Bieniemy wanting Terry McLaurin back before he was drafted. Whole bunch of stuff, man. Ron Rivera's plan to rotate left guards regular season games. That's ridiculous, dog. And all of the other injury updates like Logan Thomas, Samuel Cosmi, Terry McLaurin, Jonathan Allen, all of that stuff. Jamin Davis being pampered by compliments but from Ron Rivera. Let me know how you feel about all of that, man. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of my points in this video. And of course, man, I appreciate all the support, man. Shouts out to all of my sponsors, especially my Pro Bowl sponsors' names you scrolling on the screen right now. I'm gonna catch y'all later. I am out.